Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today in the world of All Elite Wrestling. So let's get into today's stories and let's talk about CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. When we talk about AEW right now, it's pretty much all anyone can talk about is CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, the rumors that CM Punk is in discussions to sign with AEW. He may have even already signed his contract. We'll talk about that story today. Of course, Daniel Bryan. That was really, Punk's return to the ring, or certainly discussions to return to the ring, was a big story last week. But I think almost the confirmation that pretty much a lot of people have kind of universally agreed on, that Daniel Bryan has signed a contract with AEW. At this point, more people expect Bryan to show up in AEW than maybe CM Punk. I don't know. But certainly they both were huge stories last week. And we have some more information regarding this. And this still comes from Cassidy Haynes of BodySlam.net, who has really been just all over, especially the Daniel Bryan story. He was the guy to break the Daniel Bryan story last week. He subsequently has provided a ton of extra details about when Bryan started negotiating with AEW, CM Punk, now some plans for him in All Elite Wrestling as well. So really, this has been just, talk about a monumental rise. Cassidy's been around for a while now, but certainly last week was a real coming out party for him. So first of all, obviously, huge congratulations. What a massive story he broke last week. Now, obviously, the world of professional wrestling and social media is still abuzz with the news that CM Punk and Daniel Bryan could be heading to AEW soon. Now, as I mentioned previously, it was reported by Cassidy Haynes of BodySlam.net that they had plans laid out through the next 2 months, they being AEW up to All Out. However, the last couple of weeks, there have seen new developments when it comes to Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, which may have caused AEW to reformat their booking plans. The company is now reportedly trying to figure out when certain people should debut and which talent should be involved when they do. Now, this is what Cassidy Haynes said when he was on a podcast last week regarding the upcoming debuts of Daniel Bryan and CM Punk signing. I think this is very interesting. So this is what he said, quote, "They already have plans for Bryan Danielson to debut at the Arthur Ashe show on September 22nd. However, that was a couple of weeks ago. Meltzer is saying that he's known since May," which Cassidy Haynes is denying, which is very interesting. They had discussed it internally in May when his contract ran up, but they didn't start talks about until about 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is what we spoke about previously here on the channel. So that stuff didn't start happening until recently. Then the Punk stuff happened after Daniel Bryan. So they had plans in place for Bryan at Arthur Ashe Stadium for that Grand Slam edition of Dynamite. And then this Punk stuff happened. And now it's kind of thrown a wrench into how they want to present everything. Now they've got to reformat everything because of that. Because it's how do you capitalize off this buzz? And what are they going to do exactly? That is what they're trying to figure out. So this is very interesting because, as I mentioned previously here on the channel, the working sort of tentative plan for Bryan Danielson's AEW debut was that he was going to debut at the upcoming Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York City, September 22nd, AEW Dynamite Grand Slam. The first ever stadium show, big deal for AEW, their New York City debut as well. However, with the development of CM Punk possibly signing with AEW too, there's a lot of reworking that needs to go on right now. They're trying to figure out how Punk and Bryan and how to put all of these pieces together, essentially. Now, first of all, that's not a bad problem to have at all. Trying to figure out how to fit in Daniel Bryan and CM Punk into creative plans and storyline plans is a very good issue to have for AEW. Let's put it that way. And it's still crazy to me feeling that, this time last week, this wasn't even on the table. Tuesday last week, we weren't even discussing CM Punk and Daniel Bryan heading to AEW. If you'd have asked someone what's going to happen with Daniel Bryan, the general consensus would be, well, SummerSlam's on the horizon. He could be back with WWE. If I asked about CM Punk, people said, I don't even know if he's going to wrestle again. We've had that conversation a million times here on the channel. So the fact that AEW are trying to figure things out right now isn't a bad thing at all. Personally, the way I see it, look, and we've got another story here in a second talking about plans for Punk in Chicago, what AEW wants. Logic would suggest obviously you have Dynamite, Rampage, and All Out, all in Chicago on All Out week. Of course, you've got All Out on September 5th, and then obviously the Friday before that, you've got Rampage, and the Wednesday before that, you've got Dynamite. They want Punk for those shows, and this kind of does bleed into that story, but they want to have Punk for Punk's debut for one of those shows, whether it's at the end of Dynamite to get people thinking that he's going to be on Rampage, and then they say that they promote that he's actually going to speak at All Out. I don't know what they'll do, but Punk, I think, will appear at one of those shows. When it comes to Bryan Danielson, people might look at it and say, well, September 22nd, that's quite a while away. I mean, it's essentially 2 months. Do we really want to wait 2 months for Daniel Bryan's AEW debut? My response to that would be, don't rush things. Again, this Dynamite that's coming up in September is one of the biggest Dynamite episodes of all time. I mean, it rivals the debut episode of Dynamite that was in Washington in 2019. It's just that big. It's their first ever stadium show, red hot crowd. Not that AEW crowds aren't red hot, because they have been recently, but New York City, which is a huge market for pro wrestling. Again, first stadium show, first ever pro wrestling show in Arthur Ashe Stadium. Arthur Ashe Stadium is very well known, of course, in the world of sports because of the US Open tennis tournament. There's so much that goes into that show that they need something big for that show. And Daniel Bryan's AEW debut fits perfectly, and having Punk have his own limelight for a few weeks, have his big debut on one of those Chicago shows, be involved in TV for 2-3 weeks, and then have Daniel Bryan come in on the September 22nd edition of Dynamite in New York makes a lot of sense to me. So they're trying to figure out what those plans look like right now. And what do those plans look like? Look, time will tell. Time will tell. But again, this is a positive issue, certainly a positive issue for AEW to have. Now, again, I did touch about CM Punk there, and this is a story once again coming from Bodyslam.net, another exclusive by Cassidy Haynes, who really has just been running point about all this. Now, this is very interesting because late last week as well, Ringside News, Steve Carrier of Ringside News, reported that AEW and CM Punk have officially, the deal is done. He's put pen to paper. The deal it's happened. It's officially in writing. CM Punk is officially all elite, as we would say. Now, I like many people, when I saw the news that CM Punk signed with AEW, I thought, okay, great, who's confirming it? And they went Ringside News. I think everyone went, no disrespect, Ringside News, and they can be prickly, to say the least, but I think a lot of people went, oh, okay, we'll wait till we have, a Bodyslam.net, because they've been all over this, or a PW Insider, a Fightful, maybe even Dave Meltzer. Not that I think Meltzer would go in that direction. I think, to be honest with you, Meltzer, because he's so close to Tony Khan and he's been very open about that, I don't see a scenario where Dave Meltzer would spoil a surprise like that. So I think a lot of people were cautious, to say the least, when Ringside News put out their report, because in reality, you don't need to be a good journalist to say that CM Punk has signed with AEW. It's very, very likely at this point, but pen hasn't been put to paper. Once again, Cassidy Haynes, he appeared on the Jabronis podcast to give an update as to what he'd heard regards to CM Punk signing with AEW. He was told that AEW 100% wants CM Punk for Chicago and that he will be there. He was told also that it wasn't a matter of if, but when AEW is now trying to figure out which of the Chicago shows makes most sense for him to appear. This is what Cassidy Haynes had to say, quote, "I believe the Ringside News report 100%. I've had a lot of other stuff told to me that solidifies why I believe that. I was told he's 100% for Chicago. They want CM Punk in Chicago. They want him to be there. It's not a matter of if, but when. When they have Dynamite, they have Rampage, and they have All Out." So like we were just saying a minute ago, it's definitely, at this point, a formality, according to Cassidy Haynes and according to Ringside News, take that for what you will, that Punk is going to be in Chicago. It now just becomes the point of which show's the best show. There are arguments to be made for all three. There are arguments to be made for all three. There's an argument to be made that he shows up at the end of Dynamite, says nothing, then you promote CM Punk's first promo for All Out, because it pops a big number. It would be a big moment for Dynamite. You could argue, well, it doesn't give you a big number. People might be watching anyway, just out of the hope that Punk is going to show up on that Dynamite, but whatever. Certainly, it could do good numbers for Dynamite. Certainly, it could do very good for Rampage if people are thinking he might show up on Rampage as well, and they need the viewership for that show. It's new. It's in a difficult time slot on Fridays at 10 p.m. They want to have big numbers for that show. I don't think they're going to get them. Certainly nowhere near Dynamite numbers, but if they have a feeling that Punk might show up, who knows? Then if you promote that Punk is going to speak at All Out, people will buy the pay-per-view. The place is going to be sold. I think it's sold out anyway, but certainly people will buy the pay-per-view knowing that they're going to have a chance to hear CM Punk speak on an AEW broadcast for the first time. Obviously, that can then go in a completely different direction in that you have just CM Punk just show up at AEW All Out and have a big moment like that. There's lots of different ways to go with this one. At this point, if CM Punk doesn't show up in Chicago, I think everyone would be very, very surprised. I've seen those people, the weird naysayers that are on social media going, well, if he doesn't show up now All Out, people are going to be blaming people and that's on them and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes I've actually seen journalists say that, which is crazy as well. I've also seen people that, actual journalists, this is what's crazy. I've seen journalists say, Just so annoying that these surprises get out and people release these scoops. That's what you do. How can you be angry at that? That's what you do. Of course, we'd want to live in a reality where we wouldn't find out a surprise like this, but unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast right now. The whole, wrestling journalism is a very competitive landscape and market. That is what it is, unfortunately. So we'll have to wait and see what happens when it comes to that one. Now, there was a story yesterday running talking about Tony Khan and AEW EVPs reportedly flying to Chicago to scout or maybe even film footage for AEW's debut at the United Center in Chicago later this year. Now, of course, AEW heads back to Chicago in the first week of September for 3 huge shows as they return to the Now Arena for Dynamite, Rampage, and All Out. But it looks like Tony Khan, the AEW president, has more planned for the Windy City. As Cassidy Haynes, once again at Bodyslam.net, was reporting that AEW is said to be hitting the Chicago area very hard as they want to make it their number 2 market. As I mentioned, CM Punk is planning to this as well. So, according to Cassidy Haynes, speaking to sources in AEW, he was told that the company has been eyeing the United Center as a potential venue for when they return to the Chicago area, which is expected to be later this year. Previously, of course, AEW has run the Chicago area the night before Thanksgiving with a special Thanksgiving Eve edition of Dynamite. Additionally, other sources reportedly have stated that Tony Khan and EVPs flew in his private jet on Sunday from Champaign-Urbana to Chicago. Everyone is being very tight-lipped about exactly what they were doing in the Windy City, but according to sources, once again, the trip was to potentially film some promo stuff at the United Center. Now, of course, this would fall in line with the rumors and reports that have been out there that Tony Khan is expected to make a big announcement soon, which, of course, is this coming week on Dynamite. He's expected to make a big live event or venue announcement. This could be, possibly, about AEW's debut in the United Center later this year. Now, they've posted an update about this as well, which I think is interesting, bodyslam.net. They said, quote, "We were contacted by AEW with an update saying that Tony Khan was not on the flight to Chicago. However, they did get confirmation that his family plane did, in fact, make the trip from Champaign to Chicago over the weekend." So, AEW is maybe trying to play down those reports, but we'll have to wait and see by that. What I think is interesting about all of that is that AEW contacted them going, no, Tony Khan wasn't in Chicago filming anything at the United Center this weekend, but they haven't responded to reports regarding Bryan Danielson or CM Punk. That is certainly very curious, isn't it? So we'll wait and see what happens when it comes to that one, but I think that's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, some other news, Kenny Omega recently made an appearance on the Wrestling Observer radio show with Dave Meltzer and Garrett Gonzalez, and he talked about a variety of topics, 2 of which we will discuss here. But he was asked first about AEW working with a plethora of other promotions such as Impact Wrestling, AAA, NWA, etc. This is what Kenny Omega had to say, quote, "I really wanted to kind of open the floodgates and show what it's like when people play nice with one another. I really think this is a situation where only the fans win. Now, of course, the big question remains whether AEW and WWE, currently the 2 top promotions in the United States, will ever be able to coexist and work together. I think the logic is unlikely there. Omega also isn't expecting anything on that front anytime soon, but the wrestling world ever evolving, he isn't discounting the possibility. He said, quote, "The one huge crossover, will you ever see WWE team up with anybody? Who knows? I feel as the world evolves and changes as time goes by, people become more open-minded to everything, whether it be the wrestlers themselves, people in the office, or the fans. I wouldn't hold my breath, but at the same time, I would never say it's impossible." I would never say it's impossible. I would say it's extremely, extremely unlikely. WWE lost Daniel Bryan because they couldn't work out a relationship. With New Japan Pro Wrestling. That's why Bryan himself wanted. That's what he wanted, So I think it's very unlikely. I think put it this way, end it there. I think it's very, very, very unlikely we'll ever see that happen. A new signing news, and it's Emi Sakura. Sakura is joining AEW full-time because the AEW Women's Division is about reportedly to get a boost. AEW star and Japanese Joshi legend Emi Sakura announced on Twitter last week she is returning to the United States with a one-way ticket, indicating she has made the decision to sign with AEW full-time going forward. She tweeted out, quote, "I decided to go to America with a one-way ticket. Please look forward to what happens on Choco Pro from now. We are Choco Pro and we like a challenge. Now AEW Women's Division. You better be ready." Now, of course, Sakura signed with AEW when the promotion first formed back in 2019 and competed at the inaugural Double or Nothing event, teaming with Aja Kong and Yuka Sakazaki to take on Hikaru Shida, Ryo, and Ryu Mizunami in a losing effort. Now, she would split her time between AEW and Japan until the pandemic hit last year, and notably challenged Ryo for the AEW World Women's Championship at Full Gear in November of 2019. Now, her most recent appearance on AEW programming was during the Women's Eliminator Tournament earlier this year, but she is expected to be signing with AEW going forward and being a full-time member of the women's roster. So it's a good pickup for AEW. I still think, as I've mentioned time and time again here on the channel, there are certainly things that need to be addressed when it comes to the AEW women's division. I don't think that's changed at all. I know that Omega has spoken about hoping that Rampage might help out towards that. Time will tell. Time will tell, but there is work certainly need to be done. But signing names like Emi Sakura, I think that does help AEW going forward with their women's division. There's no doubt about that. This is interesting because, as I mentioned, the AEW news world at the moment is just dominated, absolutely dominated by the reports of CM Punk and Daniel Bryan signing with AEW. And the Young Bucks, as they always tend to do, have had their fun regarding this topic. Now, as previously reported, CM Punk had reportedly been in talks about returning to the wrestling ring and is expected to be all elite in the future. Former WWE star Daniel Bryan is also rumored to have signed with AEW. As I mentioned, Cassidy Haynes has reported that Bryan was, quote, 100% locked in with the company. And now the AEW World Tag Team Champions and Executive Vice Presidents, the Young Bucks, changed their Twitter bio last week with their opinions about the current reports about Punk and Bryan. Their Twitter bio read, quote, "Are the rumors true? I don't know. We just hope they'll take our finish well." So certainly they're having a bit of fun with it, as the Young Bucks would. And like I mentioned before, when it comes to Bryan and Punk, nobody's denying it. And I think that speaks volumes. And when I say nobody, I don't just mean AEW. I don't mean Tony Khan. I don't mean the Young Bucks. I don't mean Kenny Omega. I don't mean Cody Rhodes. I mean even your Dave Meltzers. I mean even your Sean Ross Sapps, your Mike Johnson, PW Insiders, your whatever website you go to or whatever journalist you trust. And I think there's plenty out there to trust. Nobody's denying it. Now, some people have said we can't confirm it. But that's different to saying, no, we've heard that it's not true. And I think that speaks volumes. I really do. I think that speaks volumes about this whole Bryan and Punk situation when it comes to AEW. I think that's very interesting. Now, I mentioned that Kenny Omega was on the Wrestling Observer radio show, and he spoke about a variety of topics. One such topic was Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. Now, he was asked about Bryan Danielson, and Kenny Omega had some interesting comments to make about him. He said, Danielson, I still call him Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan. I always knew he was incredibly intelligent. He's ridiculously smart, especially when it comes to professional wrestling. For him to kind of create a movement, an actual legitimate movement in the Yes Movement, for him to come up with that, he created it. There's absolutely no way you could find documented evidence saying that, oh, we always planned to have you as our WrestleMania moment and be the champion. I wouldn't believe it, which is very true. Even if I saw it in front of my face, I don't think that was ever the plan, but he made it the plan because he's that smart. He was able to kind of turn everything around and emerge as a megastar because he's smart enough in a wrestling sense and a business sense, just like in Ring of Honor, how he was able to have those fans in the palm of his hands. He's able to have the entire WWE universe in the palm of his hands with one word. Really, the only other person that I can think of did that was Austin with a what. There's really nobody else I can think of that had that much power with one word. And wrestling ability, of course, second to none. He's one of the most crisp, one of the most technically sound athletes to ever step foot in the ring, especially in the current age. Now, he was also asked about CM Punk and Kenny Omega. Again, I think he answered these questions really, really well because he didn't come out and comment. He didn't say, oh, I haven't heard the rumors. He didn't even address the rumors. All he said was Daniel Bryan is a genius, did so many great things in WWE, Ring of Honor, etc. And he did the same with CM Punk. He said, quote, CM Punk, a guy who probably has a different line of thinking than your current day performer, your average performer, and he has this incredible reputation. And he has fans to this day that would follow him to the ends of the earth, a very dedicated fan base. And that fan base believes he is the best in the world and will be the best until the end of time. If you're able to have people like that who follow your career so passionately, you probably have something very special about you. It just goes to show you the way he presented himself, the way he spoke about himself, the way he spoke to his opponents, the way he performed in the ring, entrance music, his image. He was always very meticulous and he was very intelligent about how he went about it. Now, he also went on to carry on this praise for Bryan and Punk, never addressing the rumors that they could join AEW, but he did maybe let something slip towards the end. He said, quote, two extremely intelligent people who found a way to sort, I don't want to say cheat the system, but it was a system that was not created for them there. and they were able to break every ceiling that was placed in front of them and emerge as an actual legend, and these two will never be forgotten. So it's cool for me that to think that I'll be able to get in the ring with these two, possibly, but I think because they were so prominent in WWE and a lot of that was featured in those segments, angles, and character work, for me, as exciting as the wrestling part is, to tell a story is more exciting for me. So we kind of let slip there that maybe he might be stepping in the ring with him in the future. Did Kenny Omega let it slip? That's certainly interesting, and I think got a lot of people talking. Finally, Britt Baker has suffered an injury last week on the Fyter Fest Night 2 edition of Dynamite. Britt Baker is currently suffering from an injury, but will not take any time away from the ring. Now, of course, last week she defended her Women's Championship against Nyla Rose, her first successful title defense since winning the title from Hikaru Shida at Double or Nothing. Now, in an update, Britt Baker, as you can see there on the screen, attended Friday's Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship event in Tampa to watch the Paige Van Zandt versus Rachel Ostrovich fight, which Ostrovich obviously won. She posted a photo with Van Zandt, revealed that she suffered a broken right wrist during the match with Rose, but said she will not take any time off. She said, quote, "With Paige Van Zandt, and oh yeah, I retained the title on Wednesday night at AEW Dynamite with a broken wrist. Not taking any time off either, hashtag and still." Now, Baker reportedly suffered the right wrist injury when taking a Death Valley driver from Rose, according to F4W Online. Obviously, there are clips on social media for you to look at. So fingers crossed it's not serious. She's not going to miss any ring time. I don't know if she's still going to wrestle. Time will only tell. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all these AEW news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, WWE, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings, and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.